Alright, so welcome to the last video in the tutorial of making our scenery object. Now that we've created our model, we've created the bitmaps and the collision geometry, we're going to go ahead and clean up these tags and create a scenery object from them. We're going to place them into our scene, and then we're going to test it out. So to start off, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to load up Gorilla. And inside Gorilla, I'm going to open up our new model tag, the fence.gbx model. I renamed this from fence thingy to fence. So technically, we don't have multiple LODs for this. It's a very simple mesh, so I'm actually not going to be making multiple LODs. But I am going to scroll down because at the bottom here we see shaders. And these are the shaders that were created. I'm going to make a couple changes here. So I'm going to click the browse button here. And you'll notice that by default, it created the shaders inside of our tags directory instead of with all of the rest of our tags. So what I want to do real quick, so in our CEA directory, I'm actually going to go into our tags folder. I'm going to grab these shaders. I'm going to right click, cut, and then I'm going to come into custom, scenery, fence, and I'm just going to create a new folder in here and call this shaders. Inside there, I'm going to go ahead and paste these shaders, and I'm going to minimize this for now. But that also means that it's going to show up red here, meaning that it can't find this shader model. So what we're going to do is hit the three dots here, and we are going to browse to the new location that we just moved them to in custom, scenery, fence, shaders. And this is the fence shader, so I'm going to go ahead and hit fence.shader model. I'm going to do the drop down here as well. I'm going to change metal, custom, scenery, fence, shader, metal. I'm going to change feet, custom, scenery, fence, shaders, and then feet. Now, I might change these, to be honest, because one of them is already compiled. So in my case, I'm not creating entirely new bitmaps. I'm using some shaders that already exist, so I can actually just use those shaders. And for me, that was in metal. If you recall, that was the Blood Gulch shader, so I can come in and reuse that. Levels, test, Blood Gulch, shaders, and then I have Cap Metal shader environment. I'm going to double click that. You'll see that it automatically changed the shader type for me. For feet, I'm going to do the same thing. Feet was... This was inside of levels, test, tutorial, shaders, and then I think it was tutorial plate floor. So now the big one is our completely custom texture. This is our fence texture. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up. And then it shows our shader model with all the data related to it. First of all, I'm going to change the material type to metal, and it's going to be thin. And then I'm going to scroll down, and we're going to change the base map right here. We're going to hit the three dots here, and now we're going to navigate to our custom bitmap, chainlink.bitmap. Alright, so now that I've assigned the base map to be my chainlink material, I'm pretty much done in here. There's a couple more things that I could go over, and there's going to be, like I said, there's going to be tutorials on each one of these tag types. So right now this is just a general overview, so you can start to play around and tweak with stuff. And then as we get to more specialized videos, we'll go more into depth into like the animation, scrolling, textures, and stuff like that. For now, this is a simple texture. It just has a base map, and that's going to be our chainlink.bitmap. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. I'm going to close this. And then I'm going to save our changes to the scenery, so we can close this. Next, what I want to do is create a new, and this is going to be a scenery object. So I'm just going to type SC, and it'll bring me really close, and I'll do scenery, and I'll click OK. So now we are creating the scenery object, which links together the model and the collision model together. To do this, what we're going to go ahead and do is with the model, we're going to hit the three dots here, and we're going to go to custom, scenery, fence, and we're going to grab our fence.gbx model. And then for the collision model, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go into custom, scenery, fence, model collision geometry. Alright, and then we want to set a bounding radius. So what the bounding radius does is when you're far enough away from it, it won't render it. At 0, that means that you literally need to be standing right on top of it in order for us to be able to see it. I find 5 to 6 is a pretty good range. For example, a 5.5 is about the entire depth of Blood Gulch. So I'm going to make it a 6. And again, this is a very intro level kind of scenery tutorial. So that's about all we're going to do in here. So we're going to go ahead and save this. We're going to save it in our custom scenery fence folder. We're going to name this fence and hit save. And it created our scenery object. Now that's all that we need to do to create the object. Now we're going to go ahead and open up Sapien, or in my case, a hobo, and we are going to attempt to place this object into a scene. I'm going to change it up this time, and let's use the island, or the Death Island scenario instead. Alright, so now that we have Sapien open, I'm going to go ahead and open Missions, Objects, Scenery, and I'm going to click on Edit Types. This opens up our Edit Types dialog, and I'm going to add the fence.scenery object to our palette. Once I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and place it in our scene, just like many times we've done before. I'm going to change the type to fence, and we're going to take a look at what we have created. Oh, there's one more thing that we need to fix. I need to make the texture double-sided. One more thing real quick while I'm in here, I forgot to do this earlier. Inside of the fence shader model, we want to tick two-sided. I'm going to go ahead and save that. Alright, so now with that fixed, I can go ahead and place the object in our scene. Go ahead and edit type, add fence.scenery. Done. Okay. Change this type to be the fence. And then we'll see that the texture is visible from both sides. Now you'll also be able to see as I go further away, the anti-aliasing kind of destroys the maps of this fence. I'm going to fix that before we build the map. But do know that Gorilla doesn't let us change that. So that's another thing that we need MEK for. That's adjusting the maps level so there's only one or maybe two. But in this case, just because the resolution's so low, it can only handle so many pixels. So now with that done, we're going to go ahead and save our texture. It shows us down here that it's been saved. Then we're going to close out of this. Now what I want to do is we know all three textures that are required for our model. And I want to come into Mozzarella here. And what I want to do is I want to two things. One, I'm going to adjust the bitmaps on my bitmap. I can do that by loading it up here. If I come into tags, I go to custom scenery fence, I load up bitmaps and chainlink.bitmap. If I scroll down here, Mozzarella does let us change the bitmaps. I'm just going to set that to 1. I'm just going to save it. That's all I'm going to do. And then I'm going to close this. While I'm here, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to grab fence.gbx model, and I want to export all of the textures that aren't already in Halo MCC. And in my case, I have two of them, two custom textures that I happen to use. That's down here at the bottom. I'm going to expand the shaders array. I don't need to worry about cap metal, because that's already in the game. I reused a texture that was inside of Blood Gulch. For this, though, I do need to include fence, which is my completely custom, and the example tutorial plate floor, which was originally for the CE tutorial. So it's not actually in the game. However, it is something that came with Halo. So what I want to do is click the open button right here while I have fence selected. And that's going to open up our fence.bitmap, or sorry, our fence shader model. That's going to open up our fence shader model. I'm going to go ahead and expand the shader, and I'm going to go to maps, and then I'm going to go ahead and open up our diffuse map. Click preview, and then I want to change channels to ARGB, and then I'm going to click Save to File, Browse, and what I'm going to do is save it. I have a bitmaps folder inside of my CEA. I created Saber bitmaps. I'm going to save it right in here. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do the same thing for the metal plate floor. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to hit open. And once this opens the shader, I'm going to go ahead and expand this bottom section, expand diffuse, and I'm going to grab the base map right here. I'm going to click preview, drag this over, channels, ARGB, save to file, browse. I'm going to save it in the same directory. Alright, so now with that done, what I need to do is I need to follow the naming convention. For a brief reminder on that, go ahead and take a look at the IPACs and the imeta tutorial that I had. We need to add the HCE and then the directory to the texture for the game to be able to reference the correct material. Let me explain. So we have chainlink.dds. So all Halo CE textures are prefaced HCE. Then we have the directory from the tags folder that makes up that texture. So I have custom, scenery, fence, bitmaps. So I do C, F, C, S, F, B, and then an underscore. And then another thing as well is since some texture or some bitmaps are made up of multiple textures, we have to specify which one that we're referencing. And in this case, there's only one texture, and it starts counting at 0, so I just have to add underscore 0 to the end here. Now, for example, tutorial plate floor, we're going to do the same thing. That is found in levels, test, tutorial, bitmaps. We have example plate floor.bitmap right here. So that means we need to rename this. We do HCE underscore, and this is levels, test, tutorial, bitmaps underscore. And again, since they can have multiple textures inside of a bitmap, this one is texture 0. I'm just going to go ahead and do underscore 0. For most of your textures, most of your models starting out, just assume it's underscore 0, because if you know how to make it anything besides underscore 0, you'll know to change it. In future tutorials, again, we will go over this. We'll go a lot more in depth into the bitmap tag format, into the shader tag formats, and explain a lot more in depth on how we can maximize the use of these tags. For now, though, this works fine. Now that we have our textures, what we need to do is we need to build our map and then inject these textures into the IPAC. So first, let's go ahead and we're going to build a map. To see how to do that, look at the previous tutorial. Right now, I have a bat file that I'm going to use that simplifies it for me. This will install it as well. I'll include this down in the description. You can just copy and paste this into a text file and save it as something.bat. Just make sure you save it in your working directory. And what this will do is it'll go through and it'll automatically compile the scenario for me, and then it'll copy that scenario into the directory, so I'll be all set and ready to go. So I'm just going to double click this, and it asks me for the map name that I wish to compile. And the map that I wish to compile is Death Island. I'm just going to go ahead and hit enter. So it found the location. Now it's building the map. Give it a second, sometimes it takes some time. And then it installed the map for us. It copied the .map into the folder and the fmeta into the folder for us. So now all that we need to do is inject the new textures that we just extracted, these here. We need to inject that into the IPAC and add it to Death Island's imeta. So to inject the textures into the imeta, what we're going to use is TextMod. We used this before in a previous tutorial to update the imeta for a level. Now we're going to use it to inject a brand new texture into the IPAC. Now, it is very finicky. As long as you're injecting brand new textures, it should be fine. Just make sure that you don't inject anything that already exists. There could be some complications because of that. But we're just going to go ahead and click File, Open, and then we're going to scroll to our Halo Master Chief Collection root directory. We're going to open prebuild, packs, and place 1.ipack. Again, look at the imeta and ipacks tutorial if you want more in-depth look at what I'm doing here. Then I'm going to go ahead and bind the imeta for Death Island. You'll see that it's bound here now. And what I want to do is I'm going to add our 2 new textures that we have in here. So if I come into Saber, Bitmaps, you'll see I have our 2 brand new textures here. So I'm going to go to Edit, Import DDS, and then I'm going to go ahead and navigate. Let me pull this over here. I'm going to go ahead and navigate into my Saber, Bitmaps, and I'm going to grab both of these textures. Once that's done, I'm going to go to Edit, Build imeta. I'm going to navigate and replace the Death Island.imeta. Click Yes. Then I'm going to go ahead and replace in place 1.ipack. That was my backup. Okay, now while that's saving, it's going to take some time. It'll give me the worry wheel while it's doing it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start to load up Halo. Somebody mentioned in my last tutorial that I never showed how to load Halo with anti-cheat disabled. You have to do it from your library. So you load up Steam, go to your library and click play. And it'll give you this little dialog here. And click play MCC anti-cheat disabled. Now with that loaded, I'm going to go ahead and drag this over here. Click through. I'm going to make sure this is done. It's still thinking. Multiplayer, custom multiplayer, Halo CE. Going to grab Death Island. I'm going to go ahead and hit start. And that's done. I can tell it's done because it's highlighting over stuff now, by the way. So give that a second to load. Hope we don't get a fatal error. Stonks. Alright, so we're on the wrong base this time, but it's okay because it's not going to be that far away. I'm going to just grab the Banshee here and fly over there real quick. This FOV for MCC is a pain in the butt. I think I applied the wrong texture to this. However, the fence texture carried over, and that's what's important. So I have a detail. So that was already on whatever material it was I was using. So I just think I grabbed the wrong material here. No big deal. Not the end of the world. I can fix that. Gives me a chance to debug. Okay, so now that I've had a chance to debug, I originally planned on putting the fence inside of Blood Gulch. But because I decided to change things up again, I don't have the cap metal. So that's actually why it's showing up as white. So I'm going to go ahead and fix that up real quick. That's going to be Halo CE, Levels, Test, Blood Gulch, LTB. And then I want to find... Oh, there we go. Cap metal 0. So I'm going to go ahead and tick on that. Hit Edit, Build imeta. And then I'm going to replace Death Island.imeta. And we'll try again. There we go, that's a little bit better. Now that we've debugged that, we had a chance to take a look. Now we can go and see the complete texture and everything in game. Perfect. Look at that. Flawless victory. So we've created our first model. We've put it into the game. We brought the textures over with it. Now when we create a level, it's a whole lot of the same. In the next video series, that's what we're going to go ahead and do, is we're going to create a level. I usually have a test level that I create. It's usually just like a box that has default stock textures in it. That way I can test custom things that I build, and I have full control over the entire environment. So I hope you learned something. I appreciate you watching, and I hope to see you in some future tutorials.